fascinating seminar on cultural diplomacy in the Cultural Cold War, a new phase in Turco-British alliances. I think this is, of course, a fascinating topic, and one that we're all in a way part of, in the fact that we're all members of the Anglo-Turkish Society. And we've all, of course, been members of all sorts of different institutions, such as the Standing Commission on Anglo-Turkish Cultural Relations, which Geoffrey Lewis used to sit on, and I once sat on. And I'm sure there are many other similar kind of activities and organizations. And our own English Anglo-Turkish Society is one of them. And I also commend to you the extraordinary photo on the flyer for this event. When you see, it says, Devlet Tiyatrosu'nda 3. Türk İngiliz Müzik Festivali, Son Orchestra Konseri. Isn't that wonderful? And they happen, though, to be playing German and French music, but I don't think that matters. I think the point is to be together at that time. So, of course, alliances are wonderful things, and alliances presumably always have to be cemented with some kind of cultural rapprochement. And this is what we will hear about this evening from our speaker. And so you're most welcome, and we look forward enormously to your presentation. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you for your kind invitation. It's very pleasure for me to be with you. And now, can I start my video share, or should I continue?
We can't quite see you, so is your
should I start my video share? Sorry.
Please, yes.
Okay.
Okay, good. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you again, everybody. I would like to thank the distinguished members of Anglo-Turkish Society. And first of everything, I want to say something about why I am concentrating on the cultural relations between the countries, England and Turkey. And in Turkey, there are plenty of academic studies on Turco-British diplomatic relations, historical relations, the First World War, Second World War era, and other aspects of political developments. But I couldn't see any cultural relations, especially after the First World War, in the interwar period and in Cold War period. As I said, there are plenty of studies on the military intervention and other kind of developments between the countries. In 2016, I found a folder in British Archive in Kew Garden, and it was very interesting. There were too many documents on the cultural relations between two countries, especially after the Second World War in the end of 1940s. And as you know, a new era has begun for Turkey after World War II, because the multi-party system has been operated after the World War, and Turkey entered NATO in 1952, and these developments has paved the way for two countries in cultural relations. And we have to say something about cultural diplomacy between the countries as a term, international term. It is, we can say that cultural diplomacy has been formed after the Second World War, in the Cold War era. Cultural diplomacy, which was used as a means of widespread struggle and expanding its sphere of influence during World War II, And the Cold War was defined as the mutual exchange of language, idea, knowledge, and culture between nations. Unlike political diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, it operates within a three-stage plan: knowledge management, strategic communication, and relationship building. These stages reveal that cultural diplomacy pursues long-term goals, and in this respect, it shows a different aspect compared to traditional diplomacy. Uh, from the perspective of England, it will be seen that the use of cultural diplomacy and propaganda in international relations emerged relatively late compared to other states. At this point, states such as France, Italy, and Germany, they discovered that cultural diplomacy was an effective propaganda tool earlier than England and USA. We will see the institutions in France and Italy. The institutions named Alliance Francaise in France, established in 1883, if I'm not wrong, and Dante Alighieri Society in Italy, and as you know, British Council will be found in 1934. This is so late if we compare it with the other countries, with France and Italy and Japan also. They done it so early, according to England. Thanks to the cultural diplomacy carried out in foreign countries by the Alliance Francaise, which was established in the Third Republic of France in 1880, the goals in the political and economic files were realized in a short time. The Dante Alighieri Society, which was established in Italy to operate in this field, received 3% of the total Italian budget. Similarly, the Kokusai Bankuwa Shinkokuwai means International Society for the Strengthening of Cultural Relations in Japan, established in 1934, same as British Council, we can say. Finally, the British Council, which was founded by Lord Tyrrell in November 1934, started its work with an appropriation of £6,000 for the year 1935 and 36. When the war broke out, the main focus of the British Council's activities was the Balkans, Turkey, and the Middle East, where German and Italian propaganda were intensely carried out. At the end of the 1930s, which was a very turbulent period, British statesmen who aimed to create a widespread organizational network established the Turkish branch of the British Council in 19. Here we can see some of the studies that I wrote on British Council activities in Turkey, besides other studies of other academicians or scholars in Turkey or abroad. I wrote British Council and the Village Institutes in 1930s and 40s, especially on the terms of cultural diplomacy. And the other article of mine is Linguistic Imperialism or Cultural Diplomacy, British Council and the People Houses in early Republican Turkey. As you know, people houses were founded in Turkey in 1930s to widespread the new regime of Kemalist system to the inner places of Anatolia, or all the rural areas and provinces. Has its people house in that era, and British Council, British Council's activities in these institutions were very interesting. They first started for the language courses in widespread area. In east of Turkey, in the south, and also in the west. Too many people were registered to these courses and tried to learn English. And English language was not yet a lingua franca in Turkey in that period. In the end of Ottoman Empire, French was actually the lingua franca in Turkey, the most popular language, foreign language in Turkey. But after the First World War, English became to be the first foreign language, the most popular in Turkey. Finally, the British Council, which was founded by Lord Tyrrell in November 34, started its work with an appropriation of £6,000 for the year of 1935. Ahmet Emin Yalman, a prominent journalist in Turkey, now you can see the cover page of my book on this topic. We will get back for this. Yes, Ahmet Emin Yalman, a most prominent journalist in Turkey. He was a pro-Western man. He supported the Turkish modernization directed to the Western world. Ahmet Emin Yalman also supported the activities of British Council in Turkey. The other prominent statesman in Turkey was Hasan Ali Yücel, most known with his prime ministry of, no, not prime ministry, the Ministry of Education in Atatürk era, and also İnönü era. If I'm not wrong, he will be the Minister of Education till 1943, I think. Yeah, also these men supported the activities of British Council in Turkey. Ahmet Emin Yalman states the British Council, which operates with BBC Radio in Turkey, has provided a tremendous contribution to the development of Turkish-British relations. In this respect, the British Council, which pursues a culture-based propaganda method, has been involved in a planned and intensive work for the People's Houses. In a report on the People's House of 1943, prepared by Tomlin, it has taken place that Turkey has been close to Britain and the British Council in a politically powerful way, and it is also noted that if Turkey persists with this understanding and care, Great Britain and the British Council can play a major role in the development of modern Turkish culture. Now let's concentrate on another aspect of this topic. The year of 1946 must rank as one of the key turning points in modern Turkish history. Internal and external pressures combined to induce the Turkish government to allow the transition to a multi-party system. Internationally, the aggressive position taken up by the Soviet government with territorial demands and demands for joint defense of the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus made it imperative to seek the protection of the only available counterforce. The United States, from the Potsdam Conference, the new American President Harry Truman showed himself much readier than his predecessor Roosevelt had been to confront Stalin's ambitions, and Turkish annexes were taken seriously in Washington. In Cold War era, we can see a political and cultural rivalry between Britain and Germany on Turkey, aiming to revive the shared destiny and advance political alliance in the First World War. Germany had an intense struggle for cultural diplomacy in Turkey. In the preparation phase of the Anglo-Turkish Society, which is one of the first steps taken to revive the cultural relations between Turkey and England, the high transportation costs due to the distance between the two countries were discussed, while the Turkish-German Friendship Society, which was established in Turkey, was transferred between Turkey and Germany by bus. It is stated that a large number of people traveled in that time. Yes, this is academicians works on British Turkey and Britain relations history always talk about the distance between two countries, and is the main obstacle, one of the main obstacles for the approachment of the two countries. The situation has led British diplomats and politicians to think that some work should be undertaken that will positively affect the British perception in Turkey. In this context, it is planned to make progress on the need to further enrich the flow of tourists and students between the two countries with the establishment of the Anglo-Turkish Society. After the establishment, before the establishment of Anglo-Turkish Society, we can see some activities of British Council in Turkey. Okay, we see Sir Percy Lauren, the ambassador in Turkey. Britain was responsible for organizing a geopolitical rapprochement between Britain and the Republic of Turkey in 1930s. Okay, we can see the Turkish-British music festivals actually, because there were 4 festivals that we held in Turkey, in Ankara, in 1948. These festivals held in Turkey have created a greater excitement than expected in the society. Now we must say that these activities are the first cultural activities of Britain in Turkey. The positive results obtained from the first Turkish-British Music Festival held in April 1948 paved the way for the expectations to be held for the second time the following year. As a matter of fact, in a booklet published in Turkish, English, and French in Turkey for the promotion of the second music festival, expressions such as it is really rare for two countries separated by a distance of 3,000 kilometers, consisting of lands and seas, to work on such a project, thanks to the festival organized in 1948. Really indicates that the benefit expected from these events in the same direction in terms of British and Turkish authorities. We can see the British musicians in the picture. Nancy Evans, mezzo-soprano. They will be in the 4 festivals in Ankara. Some newspapers about the music festivals. We can see too many news in newspapers in that time. The third Turkish-British Music Festival was in 1950. There are also some evaluations that suggest that modern Western music is used as an element of cultural diplomacy. According to the comment that the impression of the British guests who are invited to the festival on their return can be strengthened in various ways, it was stated that giving the festival concerts over the radio could be useful in this regard. Among the audience of the festivals, we can see the president İnönü with his wife. He also visited the music festival in Ankara. This was very important event. The Turkish-British Cultural Agreement, before we pass there, we can see the other newspapers. Norman Delmar and Nancy Evans were the prominent musicians in that time. And they came to Ankara to give a music concert. Some of these pictures was taken in Ankara, and some of them were in Istanbul when they leave Turkey after the end of the festivals. Unfortunately, we don't have any information about the names of the participants in this picture. But we can guess some of them are the musicians of that time. Ahmet Saygun, Adnan Saygun, sorry, Ahmet Saygun, a distinguished musician of Turkey, especially the modern Western music. The founder of Western music in Turkey was Adnan Saygun. He was among them. Mezzo-soprano Nancy Evans in the middle, I think. Another cover. This picture was taken during the departure, I think. Delmar and Nancy Evans. At Sirkeci train station, British musicians being sent off. Okay, we will see the 1950s are very important years for Turkey for the political transformation. As I said before, as I mentioned, this era is the era of transition to a multi-party system in Turkey. This is not only a political change in Turkey, also beside all of these developments, Turkey will be approached to the Western bloc in all the ways, cultural, political, diplomatic aspects of this era are very important. The first fruit of these developments is Turkey's entrance to NATO in 1952. In these processes, we can see that the approachment of Turkish-British states will gain controlled in a will gain speed in this era. From the beginning of 1950, council officials started to look for ways to sign a cultural treaty with Turkey. For this purpose, a meeting was organized with Kadri Yörükoğlu, General Director of Foreign Relations of Ministry of National Education of Turkey, who visited England and tried to question the possibility of a possible cultural agreement. The meeting between Johnston and Kadri Yörükoğlu, one of the council's officials in England, is noteworthy as it is the first mention of the Turkish-British cultural treaty, an idea put forward by the advisory committee at the first meeting of the Council of Europe on 7 September of 1949 was that such cultural conventions will be signed among member states to strengthen ties between countries. In fact, relations similar to these treaties were already established between some countries. This issue was further elaborated at the second meeting of the ministers of the advisory committee held in Paris. In accordance with the decision that came out of this meeting, in which the cultural agreements of England, which Belgium came out of this meeting, in which the cultural agreements of England with Belgium, Netherlands, France, and Norway were shown as an example, it was recommended to the member countries to sign similar agreements. So we can say that this agreement is proposed by European Council in 1949. There were another examples saying like this treaty. Right after this decision taken by the Council of Europe, the authorities in England began to question the possibility of a cultural agreement with Turkey. A possible cultural agreement to be signed with Turkey would also facilitate the work of the British Council operating in Turkey. The Turkish-British Cultural Treaty which entered into force with the law number 6,999, dated 7 June 1959, thus gained a legal basis. The treaty, which consisted of 23 articles, sorry, contained the previously determined provisions to a large extent. In line with the call made by the Council of Europe to the member states, important initiatives have been taken to develop cultural relations. One of these initiatives was to lay the foundations of the Turkish-British Cultural Association. It was not difficult to predict that the Turkish-British Cultural Association, which was proposed to be established under the leadership of the British Council, in order to strengthen the existing cultural ties between Turkey and England, would be met with suspicion at first by the authorities in Turkey. However, based on the examples of cultural associations established between Turkey and America and between Turkey and India, it has been commented that there is no legal obstacle for the establishment of such associations. Many details were considered and some decisions were taken by the British Council in the foundation agreement of the association. According to this, the establishment proposal of the association should be made by Turkey. The establishment petition of the association, which is considered as a non-profit organization, will indicate that the members will be over 18 years old. The address of the headquarters of the association, the aims pursued, and the clear identities of the founders. It is understood from some statements that the Turkish-British Cultural Association is considered as a subsidiary of the British Council in Turkey. We can say that this is the second institution in Turkey. When we mentioned the British Council, Turkish-British Association, but we won't see any activities of this association in Turkey in 1950s. That's why Anglo-Turkish Society will be established in 1953, I think. As we can see, there was no radical change in Turkish foreign policy after the government change in 1950. Even there was not any radical change in cultural life of Turkey in 1950s, because the modernization endeavors of Turkey was started in the end of Ottoman Empire, and it non-stop processed in 1950s and also whole the Cold War period. After the decision of principle taken with Necmettin Sadak, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Republican People's Party, before the government change, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republican People's Party government, regarding the establishment of the association, a change of government took place in Turkey with the May 1924 of 1950 elections, and this process was requested to be continued with the Democratic Party government that came to power in 1950. In the letter sent by the British Embassy in Ankara to Fuat Köprülü, the new foreign minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the newly established government on 6 June 1950, this situation was explained, and it was desired to learn what the new government thought about the establishment of the said association. As can be expected, radical change were not seen in the foreign policy and the cultural life of the Democratic Party, and the establishment of this association, whose foundations were laid during the single party period, did not encounter any obstacles during the new government. Actually, this was not a surprise in that time, because we can see the continuity between the two governments. Now we can see the Anglo-Turkish society. The establishment of this society in 1953 was the result of this struggle. At this point, the correspondence between the London City Council and the Foreign Office is important in terms of understanding the main factors that played a role in the establishment of the Anglo-Turkish society. Chatham, the Undersecretary of the Foreign Office and the Secretary General of the London City Council, exchanged views, and the names of the companies and traders active in Turkey were listed, and these names were requested to be included in the platform planned to be established. Among the companies listed in the article, some of them are the Shell Company, Imperial Chemical Industries Limited, Braithwaite and Company Limited, Borax Consolidated Limited, Ottoman Bank, British European Airways Corporation, Metropolitan Vickers Export Company Limited, United Africa Company Limited, Commercial Bank of the Near East Limited are the companies that the Anglo-Turkish society involved in 1953. Price from the Daily Mail, Basil Gray from the British Museum, Sir Gerard Clausen from the Colonial Office, Professor John Grastank from the British Institute of Archaeology in Ankara, Kenneth Johnston from the British Council, and Professor Stephen Ranjiman from the Anglo-Turkish Society. It is also considered to be a signet. As a result of the initiatives made by the London City Council, contacts were made with the people mentioned below in the list. And positive feedback was received not only from the former ambassadors, but also from companies carrying out commercial activities in Turkey. During the establishment of the Anglo-Turkish Society, the intense efforts of London City Council President Edwin Bayliss are of great importance. In order to provide support from Turkey for the establishment of the institution, some initiatives have been signed. During Prime Minister Adnan Menderes' visit to London, the first thing that came to mind was that this situation was proposed to him and his support was provided. In addition, sending 6 deputies from the parliament to Turkey was one of the methods considered. As a result of these efforts, Bayliss has succeeded in gaining support from former ambassadors, members of parliament, commercial organizations, and businessmen. British Council's Mr. Johnston was also one of the names that supported Bayliss. As can be understood from this period, the British Council also played a role in the establishment of the Anglo-Turkish Society. It was stated that in the text that the closure of the London Community Centre after the change of government in Turkey increased the need for a new establishment. Finally, with the meeting held in the conference hall of the House of Commons on July 13, the first official step was taken for the establishment of the association. While Turkey was represented at this meeting by the Undersecretary of Trade and Press Attaché, the chairman of the meeting was Fitzroy Maclean, a member of the parliament. England by Mr. Bales, Professor Gernstang, Mr. Weil Phillips Price was attending. Sir Percy Lauren, the proposal for the establishment of the Anglo-Turkish Society at the meeting was made by Labour Party deputy, Mr. Made by Wallace. Wallace recently made a visit to Turkey at the invitation of the Turkish Grand National Assembly and had the opportunity to voice this issue in Turkey in the parliament. He gave a speech about this. It has been requested to ensure mutual tourist circulation and to develop trade between the two countries through the activities of the society. At this point, it is possible to increase Turkey's import rate from England. It has also been demanded that the UK diversify its purchase of goods from Turkey. These are the aims of the establishment of Anglo-Turkish society. But we also have to say that we mentioned, if you remember, Turco-British Association. They couldn't get any benefits from this institution in that era. That's why the Anglo-Turkish Society was established. On the picture, we can see Mr. Celal Bayar, the president of Turkey in 1953. On the left side of him is Adnan Menderes, the prime minister. This group are the founders of the new republic after the 1950 elections, and they passed the multi-party system. And not surprisingly, continued the modernization effort and the cultural approachment between Turkey and the Western world. The Foreign Minister Fuat Köprülü we can see his hard work during the establishment of Anglo-Turkish society in 1953. Now I have to change my screen and talk about some activities of Anglo-Turkish society in Turkey. Some of the activities of Anglo-Turkish society in Turkey in the 1950s. We have to talk about letter exchange between the Minister of Foreign Affairs of England, Mr. Anthony Eden, and Mr. Baylis, one of the founders of Anglo-Turkish society. And this letter includes the activities of Anglo-Turkish society. The number of the members were 160 at the beginning. After 1 year, the members were exceeded the 300, number of 300 in 1954. The first president of the society, Sir David Kelly, Mr. Baylis were the second president of the society. In 28 June 1954, there were a dinner in the parliament organized by Anglo-Turkish society. The members of the society met with the politicians after 1 year after the establishment of the society. Anthony Eden also attended this meeting in that time. When we look at the speech during this meeting, the dinner, the commercial and the industrial committees talked about their activities and the possibilities between Turkey and Britain, the industrial and commercial relations. They tried to increase the rate of the commerce. Okay. In 1958 and 9, we can see a table of the cultural activities. In 1958, we can see the months September, October, December. Victoria and Albert Museum, there were held a conference in Victoria and Albert Museum. In the same month, the British furnitures were presented there. In the next month, Harlow Newtown and they just tried to city side. I think the Turkish guests were sending there. And the other month, in the same year, 1958, Elliott School and new co-educational comprehensive school has been visited by the Turkish members of this society. In December, a new club has been established, named Tuesday Club. Library, language classes, television, music, tea, and other drinking and dance in that month. In 1959, a recital has been given by Laika Karabey in England. Some panels were organized by 2 Turks and 2 British experts. In February, the Turkish National Ballet about this topic has been was a conference held in February. Some films that borrowed from Turkish embassy has been shown. Turkey at Work and at Play and the Hittites, the film's names. In this era also, we can see too many archaeological activities held by British Institute of Archaeology in Turkey. We will see these activities also. In March, Professor Sedat Alp gave a conference in Victoria and Albert Museum on the topic of Hittite discoveries at Karabük. I think in April, a student party was being held. In the same month, the art of flower arrangement named this show has been organized. The Lord Salisbury's home was visited. In June, Anatolia and Our Native Shore. These films are showed also. In the other months, Istanbul, Magic City, and Kew Gardens. These films also shown there. In August, Atatürk and the Queen opens Calder Hall. These are also the films, the names of the films. In September, the summer school of Oxford University was visited. And the whole week, the films and the conferences was organized in the whole week in September. They tried to organize a Turkish week in London, Anglo-Turkish Society. And they done it, I think. They organized a Turkish week in London. Some handmade exhibition of handmade activities and pictures, books, films, conferences, concerts that explain Turkey, also shown in this exhibition. Also, some industrial developments in Turkey also presented in this exhibition. The 10th anniversary of the establishment of NATO in this respect, in November, October, and December months in the building of the society, has been a film shown also. Okay, some obstacles we can see in 1958. I think these are some bureaucratic obstacles that the society faced in 1950s. Okay, I think now we can go to other activities. Now we can see the British Archaeology Institute of British Archaeology. The archaeological activities of Britain in Anatolia were date back to 20th century, especially at the beginning of the 20th century. In the east and the west Mesopotamia, some excavations were held. And the establishment of the British Institute of Archaeology at 1948, and this institution was established in Ankara. But when we came to 1950s, also the British Institute of Archaeology has gained momentum and speed. The first name that we have to talk about was John Gerstang from Liverpool University, Archaeology Institute of Liverpool University. He was the most prominent person of the establishment of the British Institute of Archaeology. His book on Hittites in 1939 was very prominent, so vital in the archaeological science in Turkey. Okay. According to Ganstein, the first business must be the presenting the Turkey, the geography of Turkey, and the historical places of Turkey should be known, according to Ganstein. The first thing must be that. And the first excavation of Mr. Ganstein was in Polatlı near Ankara. Dr. Hamit Kosay and Nuri Gökçe also attended this excavation in Polatlı. The institute gave them £100 for this excavation. They provided them the finance. After the retirement of Ganstein, Mr. Seaton Lloyd became the second president of the institute. After the Turkish-British cultural agreement, the British Institute of Archaeology activities has been gained momentum, I said. This situation brought also some problems for the institution. The mutual commission of this treaty, the cultural treaty between two countries, a mutual commission has been established in the second meeting. They talked about the problems that British Archaeological Institute of Archaeology that faced the problems has been talked in this meeting. These problems were about the permission of the excavation in Turkey, and the Mutual Commission tried to solve this problem by opening the contact with the authorities in Turkey by the foreign ministry. Okay, I want to pass the other activities. Okay, we will see the scholarship and the student exchange program that held in 1950s till the 1960s between two countries. British Council in 1964 increased its scholarship from 10 to 18 in Turkey, thanks to the collaboration with the Ministry of Education of Turkey. British Council started the scholarship in 1960. Some problems faced in 1960 also. Ziya Tepedelen, the president of the Cultural Relations in National Education, Ministry of Education, he sent a letter to the British Council and said that Turkey must be the also must choose the nominates of the scholarship, but the British Council thought that all the nominates should be chosen by the council, but Ziya Tepedelen opposite this decision. Also, this problem will be solved by the National Education Ministry. Both sides tried to control the scholarship, as we can see, but although the finance has been provided by British Council for this scholarship program. Okay, the problem has been solved, and we can see the nominates that selected for this scholarship program in 1956 and 57 and 58, 59. We can see the names and the which university the candidate was sent, and the discipline. For example, we can see the especially much of them are different type of engineering, and some teachers has been sent to England. We can see the institutions that students sent it. Cambridge, United Hospital Leeds, National Physical Laboratory. These names are chosen from the National Ministry of Education of Turkey. Also, Foreign Office tried to solve this problem. Okay, the Turkish expats that educated in England, they get the education not as a master degree or graduate. These are the only conferences or another type of courses, we can say. We can see the names here, and the administration, the central government administration, the name of the course, the planning, city planning, 19th century England literature, art and social change. For the Turkish teachers, a summer school has been opened in Oxford and London, in Cardiff, Cambridge, contemporary British literature. Okay, these are the names that been sent to England during the year of 1959. Okay, Turkey also applied to their counterparts. I mean, the British consuls or the Anglo-Turkish Society. They applied them to protect the cultural identities of the Turkish minority in Britain. We can see this also was a we can see this in a British archival document. Turkish authorities applied for the protection of the cultural identities of the Turks in England that lived in England. Also, some of the Turks from Cyprus originally wanted to learn Turkish language in England. The Turkish authorities wanted to open the special classes in British schools for the Cyprus origin Turks. However, there were some universities in England that Turkish language already been taught, and some teachers will be sent from Turkey. The British authorities offered that already there are Islamic studies in Manchester University, and Professor Beckingham can manage that. I mean, the Turkish language teaching. This is another aspect of the cultural relations between the two countries. Also, we can pass here. Yes, the exchange of the academicians, the academics and the teachers between two countries also were the other activities in that era. Turkey, the authorities in Turkey wanted to send teachers of the high school and how can we say that degree secondary school and high school teachers wanted to be sent to England by Turkish authorities. And already British Council has opened language classes in Turkey and sent the teachers, English language teachers in 1940s. As I mentioned before in my some of articles, British Council were very successful in this topic. Turkey wanted to do the same thing, I guess. In 1956, a cultural agreement was signed. According to this agreement, the academics also would be exchanged. And this topic was being talked in a meeting between British Council and the Minister of National Education of Turkey, Mehmet Emin Hekimgil, and they talked about this. They talked about some of the obstacles this program has faced, the financial problems, and the visa problem, I think. This was a big problem, really, in that time also. Okay, the British experts that came to Turkey in 1958, 59, doctors especially, these are the names. And they came to give some conferences, I think, not for a long time to stay in Turkey and teach. They gave conferences, I think. This is the name of the activity. Yes. The spring festivals in April and May of 1959. Okay. The list is continuous, a long list. Experts from Turkey that went to England are Sabri Ülgener, well-known academics in Turkey, especially his studies in the field of sociology. Ülgener, Düzgüneş, about the zoology. Halil İnalcık, the well-known historian of Turkey. He passed away 3 years ago. He went London, Durham, and Edinburgh. And Ülgener went Oxford.
So you should begin to think about your conclusions now, as you've been speaking
All
for
right.
an hour. Mhm.
All right. All right. As a conclusion, we can mention that cultural activities in 1950s are very important, extremely important to be talked about and to search as an academic study. And my aim is to deepening my studies of related this topic. The last of these lists we can maybe we should mention the British experts that came to Turkey in 1956 and 57. Different type of disciplines are these experts. They studied about the city planning, radiotherapy, technical education, pediatry, economy, English literature, and some other kind of disciplines. Okay, if you have any questions, maybe we can talk about these questions. Maybe we can say something more for this. I would like to thank you for your listening. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that very nice and detailed overview that really gives us a glimpse into the not so distant past, the past which many of us can almost remember. That's very good. Well, if you could kindly stop sharing your screen, then
Okay.
we'll have a chance to have a chat. I don't know if it will. Oh, does it not stop sharing? Ah, perfect. Perfect. Perfect. Very good. Very good. Okay, so people can switch on their cameras now again if they would like to. Yes. Well, it's very interesting, of course, how these different organizations interact with one another and how there are comparatively few people also involved. It was some very, very familiar names as well as some new ones as well. And I went to see that Manchester was there, because sometimes we think of Oxford and SOAS as being the great centres of Turkish studies in Britain with these kind of links. And of course, Durham with their Middle East and Turkish centre that they had for a while. But Manchester is something that we shouldn't forget. I don't know, when you were first in Manchester, Cheetah, was there a strong Turkish still idea about the links the university had with Turkey?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Very strong, very
Mhm.
strong. I mean, a lot of graduate students in
Right.
different departments. Before my time, which was 1986 on, there were a lot of students in engineering. That was the strongest, and at you missed engineering and sciences, natural sciences, really. Later on, even the president of Boğaziçi University got his PhD from Manchester. Names that we really know. So yeah, Manchester played this role, I think. Yeah.
And of course, the other level of reciprocity is through education grants. So the British Council was mentioned as being fantastically important. I mean, my great patron in Turkey, or one of them, had done his PhD in the University of Aberdeen through a British Council PhD grant. And whenever I have met people from the British Council, I've always said, look, you know, the way to make friends for life is to support your PhD. And the master's course is fine, it's interesting, but it's not the same as getting a PhD. But as well as that, we've got these limited ones on our side, but on the Turkish side, there were very strong investments in sending people from Turkey to Britain, paid for the side on really quite generous grants. Nowadays, of course, it goes through YERC, but before that, it must have just been through the Department of Education. But they went to study things like textiles for the Summer Bank, for example, and of course many PhDs in areas we know better, such as sociology and anthropology, sent in. And so many colleagues in Turkey have done their doctorates in Britain, often funded by the Turkish state, although not always. So there was a very, very strong idea in Turkey, therefore, investing in overseas higher education. I don't know if you came across this very much in your researches, Resul.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks to the politicians in that time, the politicians were very proponent of these activities also. They really help the activities and make decisions for these. This is very important, I think.
There was also a very strong trend later on of British Council bring up the summer short courses to a variety of teachers. So teachers of English, for example, they were trained in the summer courses in Britain, which were fantastic in the 1980s. I sent my teachers from Gazi to England. And before that, it was going on for decades. So a lot of the English teachers, many of the math teachers who taught using English, they were trained in one way or other in England.
Yes, sending students in Turkey is not an emergent thing. We know from the history in Tanzimat period in the 19th century, students had been sent to abroad during the Selim III, Sultan Mahmud II, and in the Sultan Abdulhamid. Many of students were sent to Europe, but after the proclamation of the Republic, this tradition continued, and this we can see that clearly. This inherent from Ottoman Empire, sending students abroad.
But what I have a question. My question is, your data is very good, and I am going to read your book. But what is your conclusion? I mean, what are you saying?
Okay. In a part, I can't remember the page of the book, but I said that these activities for Britain were a part of cultural diplomacy. But for Turkey, these were all made for the modernization, cultural modernization. And this is win-win for England and for Turkey. They look for to this from different windows, but they reach the same results. I said.
Okay. Okay. Probably the same thing can be said for the Goethe Institute.
Yeah.
The same can be said of the Americans through Fulbright and other. Yeah. Probably the same can be said of Turkey.
Yeah.
Recently, after
Yeah. Turkey made these activities so lately. In 2000s, we can say. The Institute of Yunus Emre, maybe you heard about Yunus Emre Institute.
Yeah.
Tried to strengthen the ties between the Balkan
And before that, before Yunus Emre, remember? Of
there
the
are some
variety of institutes of Fethullah.
Oh, right, yeah. And these activities are so critical in Turkey nowadays.
But anyway, yeah.
Indeed, indeed. And what about archaeology? You mentioned archaeology several times, but how big a role does it play in the 1950s, do you think?
Yes, actually in Atatürk era in 1930s, the American archaeologists has many activities in Turkey during Atatürk era. Atatürk himself supported the activities of the American archaeology because he said them, please find some clues that the Hittites were Turks. You know, the Turkish historical thesis in 1930s said that whole the world is originated from the Turks. And Mustafa Kemal supported the archaeologists. But when we came to 1950s, these archaeological activities are also seen as cultural activities between two countries. And in that time, these relations also helped to solve some bureaucratic problems and bureaucratic obstacles for the archaeologists in Turkey, because they tried to get permission for the excavations, and many times they couldn't get the permission from the authorities. Thanks to these institutions, Anglo-Turkish Society and other institutions, the archaeologists easily solved these problems, the obstacles.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Of course, archaeology gave multiple cultural links. And we've got the Austrians and the Italians and the Americans and the British and the Germans and the French. So it's a wonderful way to make such links.
First archaeologists in Ottoman were the Germans. We know Mr. Sharman that excavated the Troy era in Çanakkale, in Gallipoli.
Mhm.
Troya, you heard about, I think. The first excavations were held by German archaeologists
Mhm.
during Abdülhamit. The British archaeologists are the last, I think, before
Yes.
after the American archaeologists and Germans. Third, we see the British archaeologists in
That's
Turkey.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why the British Institute of Archaeology is in Ankara, not in Istanbul.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in Ankara, correct. And it's still going on the activities, I think, in Ankara, British Institute of Archaeology.
Yeah, I think so as well. Well, anyone else have any questions for our speaker? It's fine if you wish to unmute yourselves or to take off your video, to switch on your videos. And the other thing, of course, is how your earlier comments, I think, were referring to the Turk-Evi, which was opened up in London.
Yeah.
But I don't know much that other than the fact it was opened up, and I saw some invitations to it. They did a kind of a brochure, which I've seen. Do you know much about the Turk-Evi?
Actually, a people house in London also were established as a part of the people houses in Turkey. As I mentioned, all the provinces has a people house in Turkey in 1930s, and one people house were established in London. This is the only people house that established abroad. And after the close of the people house in Turkey, we saw the Turkish house that established as one of the activities of Anglo-Turkish society. I think this was only a temporal Turkish house for an exhibition or for 1 week, maybe the visitors accepted. And we don't know what were exhibited in the Turkish house in that time. We only know the name and the information that this house were established for 1 week, I think, for the exhibition.
Thank you. I don't know if anybody has any more questions or comments from our other members. Oh, well, I think maybe because it's so close to Christmas, I think everybody's already thinking about the festivities and near the end of a long term.
Maybe.
Well, if there really are no further comments, I simply have to thank you so much for that extraordinarily interesting overview. And it's very, very nice of you to join us and to take time out from your schedule. We appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Well, in that case, I shall wish you good night and all success in your researches.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My pleasure. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
To everyone.
Thank you very much. Right. Good night.
Good night.